The 1980s were a wonderful time. We had great music. We had great technology. We were going to solve all the world's problems. We had Prince and this guy. And you could get mugged by a couple hookers that looked great. We had Gorbachev and Reagan. And we had our own style of video games, along with this guy and these guys. Hair was the thing. But we also had these folks. And this guy. We had all kinds of televangelists. It was great, each one making a bigger tale and a bigger lie than the last one.
That is God penetrating your heart. It's burning on the inside of you, and you need to make a vow of faith of $1,000.
Denver police have had a serious problem with teenagers and Satanism over the past 5 years. The most disturbing, an increase in teenage homicides and suicides with ritualistic or satanic overtones. Animal sacrifices, birds, dogs, church desecrations, and burglaries.
Yes, the 80s weren't all good. We had great, fantastical stories of satanic abuse and covens. And I think it all started in the 60s with this guy, Charles Manson, and his Manson family was big news, especially after the murders that took place in Los Angeles. No one could forget these views of dead bodies being taken out of the home. It was everywhere. As the 70s came to a close, the 80s really picked up steam when it came to demonic forces and Satan. Everyone everywhere felt that more and more satanic ritual abuse was happening all over the world. And before long, we were having TV shows with these experts that were telling us all how to identify Satanists. Everyone was on edge. And then these books started showing up. Dungeons and Dragons and video games and all of these different things played in.
Dungeons and Dragons. Some claim it's a simple, harmless game. Yet suicides, murders, and robberies have been linked to this game.
Did you know Tom Hanks was actually in a Dungeons and Dragons themed movie? So now we were having satanic masses and all kinds of stuff pop up everywhere on mainstream TV and the news.
I'm going to fast forward now, and you can kind of get a feel for the song. Very mellow, you know, almost pretty. I've actually taken the exact piece of tape that you just heard it off of, and I've reverse thread the machine, and I'm going to play that exact piece of tape backwards now. Okay.
As I live with
How
Satan.
many in the audience heard that? All right.
There's power in Satan.
One more time.
Even the 700 Club with Pat Robertson got in on the act, becoming satanic experts.
The media bombards kids today with messages, many with satanic overtones.
Satan's not stupid. He understands that kids today are visual, and so he's making a play for excitement, for total involvement of the senses.
And then Geraldo took it up another level.
The Investigative News Group presents the Geraldo Rivera Special. Devil Worship. Exposing Satan's underground.
Whether a Satan exists is a matter of belief, but we are certain that Satanism exists. To some, it's a religion. To others, it's the practice of evil in the devil's name. It exists, and it's flourishing. Being into heavy metal doesn't necessarily mean your kid's also into Satanism, and most of these fans are not. But there is an undeniable connection between obsession with the really hard stuff and the occult.
The upside-down cross is a symbol of Satan. Ozzy is the rock and roll king, and most acid rock is involved with Satanism.
Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast.
A heavy metal freak from Louisiana, Joe got himself into self-mutilation in Satan's name.
We'd cut our arms and let the blood drip into a cup, and we'd pass it around and drink from the cup, from each other's blood.
Kim from Colorado also practiced the gruesome ritual.
Violence with blood. We like to see blood, and we used to eat blood and stuff like that.
Drinking blood as entertainment is apparently a staple in the acts of heavy metalists like Wasp.
My life became centered not only around the marijuana I was smoking and the booze I was drinking, but it became centered around Satan.
Personally, I am a Satanist, a practicing Satanist, but we never tried to preach that religion to anybody.
Bull. An avowed Satanist, Diamond's protest that he's not preaching is belied by lyrics laced with references to death, graves, and evil in Bayou country in southwest Louisiana. One persistent problem has been grave robbing.
So what do they take out of these tombs?
They take out the bones, okay, especially on the older type grave sites as this, because our understanding is that the right little finger has something to do with that culture, and they make a necklace out of them and they wear them.
But there is no doubt, at least not in our reporting, that that heavy metal music plays a role. Every single kid that whose case we know about, who committed a violent act in Satan's name was also into heavy metal music. What's your response to that, Oz?
Well, I don't really know. All I do is make music. You know, I don't sit down and purposely plan to freak everybody out. I mean, I always have played heavy metal music. I suppose when I was younger and I started writing songs, my world was kind of dark and dingy. You know, I came from a working class family who had nothing, no dough, no prospect of ever having much money, and so that's how I saw the world as a child. And so, I mean, not all my songs are about Satanism.
With the media's help, Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan took off. And there were Satanists everywhere and even murdering children.
West Memphis 3 were targeted for their reputations at their high school and were charged for murdering 3 young boys. Through false confessions and poor police investigation, the 3 teenagers were sent to prison. Eccles received a death sentence, Miss Kelly was sentenced to life in prison plus 2 20-year sentences, and Baldwin was sentenced to life in prison. The case, originally having gone to trial in 1993, was called for retrial, and the 3 have since been released from prison. TV programs were being created by ABC and Oprah Winfrey, which piggybacked on the popularity of Satanism. Anti-cult organizations began to create books and films advising against things that they considered dangerous. Children were pressured into giving statements confirming the abuse. Nothing seemed to come of this case, but there are many just like it that resulted in innocent people being sent to prison. It was later revealed that the children had given false statements.
I watched them take the lives of children. I watched them take the life of my twin brother. People simply don't believe that this stuff goes on.
If we don't educate one another, it's going to be the crime of the 90s.
Bob Larson's In the Name of Satan took off like a rocket.
These symbols of Satanism are turning up everywhere. On walls, on clothes, on album covers, and even on bodies of murder victims. Law enforcement officials admit that satanic cults operate in nearly every community in America. Young children from Oregon to Massachusetts say they've been raped, tortured, and forced to watch small animals killed during satanic ceremonies. School officials in many cities report high school students are forming satanic groups. A Chicago policeman told us, satanic crime makes gang activity look like a nursery school.
What?
Satanic crime makes gang activity look like a nursery school. Ramirez is the Satan worshiper who now sits on California's death row after being convicted of 13 brutal murders. Ramirez often left satanic symbols at the scenes of his crimes, carving a pentagram on the body of one victim and on the bedroom wall of another. In San Francisco, former waiter Clifford St. Joseph was found guilty of murdering a man during an apparent satanic ritual. In Dade County, Florida, Frank Fuster and his wife were convicted of ritually abusing children at the daycare center they operated in their home. And the prosecutor called the Fusters' systematic abuse of the children, quote, outrageous. And in the longest trial in American history, children who attended the McMartin preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, told of seeing teachers in dark robes, watching small animals killed, playing sexual games, drinking blood. In a trial that many say was botched, none of the defendants was found guilty. But 7 of the 12 jurors said they believed the children had been abused, and virtually every expert familiar with the case believes a satanic cult was operating out of the school.
I was forced to help kill other children. I was forced to participate in their cannibalism. Put in the middle of the circle and there was a fire around me. During that part, I was told I was being married to Satan and being a child of Satan forever and that kind of stuff.
Most vividly, I recall about torture. I remember a lot of it very vividly.
She remembers being raped by cult members, shut away for hours in a dark, scary place.
It was actually a closet and a welded wire cage, and the bottom of the cage would be opened. That would be how I would be put in it and suspended in a closet. And it was a very simple thing that they did. They just set a board inside the door and then dumped a bunch of snakes in on the floor, which I could see. They were probably even harmless snakes. But I was a child, and then they shut the door and left me in there in the dark, and I could hear it.
Christy also suffered horrible abuse at the hands of her family and their satanic cult.
I remember being drug out of bed at midnight and taken to this dark cemetery where
they would have rituals going on, satanic services or various things, and there'd be people chanting and the black robes. And I remember one of the first experiences as a teenager where I watched them sacrifice a little boy.
Like, it was a great privilege to eat the bodies. I mean, the girl that I had to kill, they treated me like I was being given a great gift when they gave me a part of her body that I had to eat.
That was real hard to deal with, you know, because people say, well, why didn't you ever say anything? Well, when you have such vivid memories of seeing your brother die, then you know not to talk.
These drawings by survivors from all over the country reflect similar memories of torture and rape at the hands of satanic cults. It seems like the stuff of supermarket tabloids or trash TV. We could dismiss all of this easily, except for so many similar stories told by so many survivors. The reality of Satanism is even more believable when you talk to reputable therapists like those here at Columbine Hospital in Denver, Colorado. They believe the survivors are telling the truth.
We started investigating these secret satanic cults when a British Member of Parliament linked them with the ritual murder of children. In this day and age, it sounded too far-fetched, as did suggestions that the same thing might be happening in Australia. But then we met Teresa.
And then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice, were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
Your nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
Goats and donkeys. I've never heard of the donkey part. Well, never mind.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing.
A chronicle of debauchery and depravity so horrific it's hard to believe. You have to ask yourself, could Teresa be just making it up?
This really happened, you're quite sure of that?
Yeah.
Don't smile. Don't smile. We almost got a smile. Don't smile.
Few people, if any, in Britain have counselled as many victims of satanic abuse or Satanists themselves as Ray Wire has. If there is an expert on satanic cults, it would have to be him.
Do you believe Teresa's story?
I believe Teresa's story.
What did they say about the devil, about Lucifer?
That killing the people made him happy.
According to Teresa, the worst rituals took place at a house somewhere in the country. Teresa says she can't take the police there because the Satanists made sure she'd never know how to find it.
One time, baby was taken out of me and then killed in front of me because it was still alive.
And then, what would happen?
Well, after they killed it, they would eat it.
Don't smile. Don't smile. Stop it. Stop it.
That was just part of our investigation of Satanism in Britain. We're also gathering evidence about the activities of such cults here in Australia.
All these animals destroyed, and they were hacked and butchered and stabbed and bludgeoned, and I got a hell of a fright, really.
Like you're holding the animal out, like on an imaginary altar, if you haven't got an altar, that is.
The man who did it, John Charles Burdo.
You puncture the heart, make a sign, slit the throat and whatnot, and it goes on from there.
This is how Burdo prepared for his sacrifice, with a ceremonial circle.
The circle is a protection.
He believed that inside it, he couldn't be harmed. His protector that night was the devil himself. Did you love the devil?
At the time I did, yeah.
I think Warwick's a quiet little country town where everybody knows everybody and everybody's business. And for something like that to happen right in our midst, yeah, we were shocked.
Wayne Richard Cockram. Like Burdo, he was 17 at the time of the massacre. What did you think when you'd finished?
Holy hell.
Holy hell indeed.
They were picked up within a week. Wayne Cockram hid from the cameras. John Burdo spat at them. Both went to jail for the crime. Though no one will say precisely how many were there that night, there was definitely a third, Craig Anderson. To set up a fully fledged satanic cult in a country town like Warwick is a real test of ingenuity. To begin with, where do you get the information? How do you know which spells and symbols to use? Well, in John Burdo's case, he took the direct approach. He went straight to the local library, looked under O for occult, and he was off.
Yet another reason why libraries should be outlawed.
And what the local library couldn't provide, they brought down from Brisbane for him.
What
animals did you kill?
Everything from hens to kittens to cats to, in the end, sheep. It got out of hand in the end because everyone's taking it a little bit too psychotic.
You think so?
And going into frenzies and whatnot, which was very strange.
Bishop John Reed of St Andrew's Cathedral in Sydney.
There's certainly, as you have shown in this particular incident that's on this program, it's brought death to some people. And I think that has occurred again and again.
I could have went mad and killed myself, or something. I don't really know. Because at the time I was uncontrollable, and so was everyone else that was there.
Survivors say that satanic groups are establishing preschools and daycare centers for the sole purpose of recruiting vast numbers of small children.
We are hearing from those survivors that there is a deliberate and concerted and well-organized, well-orchestrated effort, an indoctrination at an early formative age when a child is going to be most susceptible to being emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually hooked to the cult and hooked for life.
Still with her is she believes she's being watched. Every red car and black car that goes by is watching her. Every lady that dresses in blue are kidnappers. They will kidnap kids. These are things that she's been told.
The most vicious crimes being committed in the name of Satan
are being perpetrated by the church.
Are being perpetrated by young people in their teens.
Is the apparent practice of Satanism. That's worship of the devil. Now, police have been skeptical when investigating these acts, just as we are in reporting them. But there is no question that something is going on out there, and that's sufficient reason for 2020 to look into it.
An eyewitness said the victim, Gary Lowers, was forced to pray to Satan as he was repeatedly stabbed to death. 2 young men were arrested. James Troiano was found innocent last month, but his alleged accomplice never made it to trial. Ricky Casso committed suicide in jail the day after his arrest. Despite numerous signs that Casso was into Satanism and rock music associated with devil worship, police steadfastly refused to label this case satanic. The official explanation, a drug-related crime. Dateline, Phoenix, Arizona, 140 dogs found slaughtered. Across the country, police tell us, there have been more than 15,000 animal mutilations, and often they were clearly used in some kind of bizarre ritual, but there's no official explanation. Dateline, Walnut Grove, Alabama. Police are called in to investigate the site of what appears to have been a ritual. They find various satanic paraphernalia, including pictures of the devil. There was a routine inquiry which didn't discover what was going on here. Across this country and Canada, satanic graffiti is turning up on public buildings and abandoned buildings, where police suspect secret meetings are being held by people calling themselves Satanist, people who worship the devil. Most often found, the inverted 5-pointed satanic pentagram, the upside-down cross, the evil eye, references to Babylon, and the devil's number, 666. Vandals often target churches. Here in southern Maine, after a dozen churches were painted with satanic symbols, police arrested a suspect.
Worrying about the message. That's one comment.
Although vandalism charges were later dropped, he offered an explanation for the church graffiti from behind a locked door.
Anyone that receives the mark of the beast, which is 666, is his number, is going to burn in hell forever and ever.
It's the way some people interpret the Bible. the book of Revelations, where it's written, Satan can be identified by the number 666, calling him the beast, which deceiveth the whole world. The goat's head is a key symbol of the beast. Yet throughout history, Satan has taken on many different shapes and disguises. He's widely considered by conventional religions as the embodiment of evil, on a mission to tempt man to sin and destroy God's kingdom. Today, we have found Satan is alive and thriving, or at least plenty of people believe he is. His followers are extremely secretive, but found in all walks of life. Mike Warnke is a former Satanist. Today, he's a successful comedian, preaching Christianity in the form of humor. But back in the 60s, he was one of Satanism's high priests.
The things that you would see in a satanic altar.
He showed us what a satanic temple might resemble, and typical implements used to worship the devil.
The bones usually are used in a ceremony that calls for telling the future with the bones or a part of the deceased person.
He also explained what attracted him to Satanism.
I was basically drawn into it when I was young, just wanting to be somebody special. I just wanted to be different than everybody and have something that was special that everybody, looked up to.
Mike Warnke was also a liar and a fraud. His book, Satan's Cellar, was debunked.
Almighty Satan, destroy those who love God.
Although not connected to the Church of Satan, these 12-year-old boys, with their parents' consent, demonstrated how they were taught to inflict pain on their enemies. Police have found no proof, made no arrest. But that's no surprise. For nationwide, police are hearing strikingly similar horror stories. Take, for example, this case, the mother of a young victim who asked not to be identified.
Usually they had the children kill the infants or the other kids.
The children who were there actually were given knives?
Yes, they were.
Children of the corn.
And if they refused to do it, an adult, usually the child's father or mother, would actually take the child's hand and make them kill the child.
Ritualistic murder has become a specialty for San Francisco's chief medical examiner.
Are local investigators really prepared, equipped? Do they know what to look for when investigating these cases?
No, I don't think they do. Even though many different people are trying to get out the message about ritualistic or funny types of killings, first of all, just on their face value, they sound so unusual or bizarre that most people hearing that message really don't think that it's true.
It's bizarre and hard to prove. Yet details that were told to us in interviews conducted across the country were later verified by authorities, who say there are consistent telltale clues. And they provide a checklist of 6 satanic practices to look for. For example, being placed inside a coffin. Another indicator, satanic paraphernalia. Another indicator, kidnapping. Number 4, sexual abuse aimed at destroying faith in God. Cannibalism. And finally, cremation.
When you get into one of these groups, there's only a couple ways you can get out. One is death. The other is mental institutions. Or the third, you can't get out.
Two troubled women. Both sought help from some of the top doctors in the country. The diagnosis? Satanic ritual abuse.
It was like going deeper and deeper into an abyss.
After millions of dollars in treatment, the women now say the doctors were wrong.
It stopped because I stopped following Dr. Braun's orders.
Tonight on Frontline, the search for Satan. Mary's journey, paid for by her insurance company, took her into one of the most controversial areas in modern psychiatry. It began 6 years ago when Mary lived with her husband Joe and her 8-year-old son Ryan in the suburbs of Chicago.
My therapist felt that I might be suffering from dissociative disorders. And so I went for an evaluation at the best hospital in Chicago with the leading experts in the field.
The hospital was Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's in Chicago. Her therapist, who had attended a seminar on satanic cult abuse, thought that might be another explanation for her depression.
We're talking about people in some cases who are coming to us as patients who were raised in satanic cults from the time they were born.
I have letters in my file from over 40 states in the United States and several provinces of Canada and one from England, with very similar data.
If just a tiny bit of it is true, it's appalling, and there's a need for somebody to do something.
Part of the power of the cult, both with the individual and with the others around it, is its ability to induce fear.
Dr. Bennett Braun became a leading spokesman on the connection between MPD and ritual abuse. Dr. Braun prescribed the medication. He put Mary on a variety of medications, among them Halcyon, Klonopin, Xanax, Prozac, and on experimentally high doses of the heart medication Inderal.
Wow, that is quite a list.
Heavily medicated, Mary says she lived in fear.
They told me that I had already been programmed that if I divulged the secrets from the cult, that I would self-destruct.
It was because of her doctor's reputations, Mary says, that she persevered in her treatment, despite her fears and her growing misgivings. Pat Burgess was one of the first patients on the unit in 1986. She arrived after having been in a depression for 3 years, following the difficult birth of her second son. When a social worker diagnosed her with MPD, she sought help at Rush.
These were the experts. I didn't turn to them for fringe therapy, some goofy, controversial crap.
I did not order the goofy crap.
What do you hear her say?
That the hurting is over. Dr. Braun often treated me like his star patient. I would have to teach other residents and doctors and media people about multiple personality disorder.
Who's there?
So you did order the goofy crap.
Sarah.
How old are you, Sarah?
I'm 5. I was supposed to switch personalities for the camera.
Who's this?
Karen.
Karen, you don't seem too happy.
I'm not. Dr. Braun and I kind of rehearsed that a few times to make sure that it looked believable for the interviewer.
Patty says that Dr. Braun both pushed her to remember things that didn't occur and then believed her stories. Dr. Jack Leggett is a clinical psychologist who used to review mental health claims for insurance companies around the country. Beginning in the late 1980s, he noticed a startling pattern in the claims involving MPD patients. Most of them had generous insurance policies.
And the truth will set you free.
The focus was generally on patients with very rich benefits plans, and I would find in some cases that large numbers of people from single employers with those types of plans would suddenly be presenting with this diagnosis, an incidence of multiple personality way beyond anything reasonable that could be expected for a given population of individuals. So.
Relating that to you, thinking that you as a child of God have to follow Jesus. The Bible says that he has left us an example that we should follow his steps. That's the reason why I drive a Rolls Royce. I'm following Jesus' steps.
Where these goofy traditions creep in at, but one of the goofiest ones is that Jesus and his disciples were poor. Now, there's no Bible to substantiate that.
I like a $1,000 vow because don't like half-hearted people, lukewarm. Just do a little. I like a $1,000 vow of faith.
The mess that the airlines are in today, I would have to stop. I'm being very conservative. At least 75 to 80, more like 90% of what we're doing, because you can't get there from here.
It's impossible.
So and this was such a good illustration. I just the Lord impressed me. That's why we're on that airplane. We can talk to God. You can't manage that today. Right. This dope-filled world. Right. And get in a long tube.
I've never heard flying described like this before.
With a bunch of demons.
Right. That's exactly the
And it's deadly.
And he works on you hard. It really does.
Abundance will come to you in the name of Jesus, the Son of Almighty God. For those who want abundance, $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, $1,000.
Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me
word's not for everyone, but it's a particular person. You should have moved a long time ago. As surely as I'm speaking by the Spirit of God, that is a word for a person right now. That is God penetrating your heart. It's burning on the inside of you, and you need to make a vow of faith of $1,000. Oh, Bob, couldn't you say 25? No!
Read my lips, no discount.
Then we got this soap opera that's being carried out live down in South Carolina, all under the name of God. And my business is preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ.
He would just, well, he'd more or less do the same thing. He just want to watch me pose, do different poses for him. He asked me several times if I had another woman I could get so he could watch both of us.
I have sinned against you, my Lord. I have sinned against you. And I beg your forgiveness.
Teenagers across America are playing with a new and frightening game, Satanism. Their school books are marked up with satanic symbols, upside-down crosses, pentagrams, the number 666. Their fashions glamorize the demonic. They are seduced by heavy metal heroes, many of whom feature satanic imagery in their songs and album covers. For some of these young people, the fixation on violence, evil, and death leads them to commit abominable crimes, including suicide and human sacrifice. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was convicted of 13 murders and 30 other felonies. During the summer of 1985, he beat, strangled, raped, sodomized, shot, and slashed his victims in a rampage of sadistic satanic slayings. These atrocious reports are unfortunately nothing new. They are only the tip of the iceberg.
So I believe that despite all the good that Wiccans think they do, their power source is exactly the same as that of Satanism.
Many officials have been reluctant to admit the horrendous ramifications of satanic activity in America and Europe. But despite opposition, some people have come forward and spoken against the upward swing of Satanism as a serious epidemic that must be considered.
Good is evil and evil is good. The truth is a lie and a lie is a truth. Sweet is bitter and bitter is sweet.
We would like to classify them as the dabbler. Then you have your religious Satanist, then you have your non-traditional Satanist, and then your generational Satanist. There are no statistics to prove anywhere in the United States of America or the world that this stuff is widespread. But it's my opinion that it's more widespread than you can shake a stick at.
All the more reason to outlaw sticks.
Satanism, we are finding, is becoming international and interconnected. They are interconnected in Britain from one city to another and into Europe and into America. A lot of money is involved, a lot of finance, and this finance is made through pornographic videos, through drugs, and through arms.
That's quite a trifecta.
The Ouija board literally told them how to draw a 5-pointed star and how to do a particular spell.
Dead because of ritual satanic murder. And this is because there are more and more Satanists.
So the 1980s was a time of the satanic panic. But how many of these stories from the 80s sound familiar today? How many of these things are you experiencing today and hearing on the news? It has always been a religious fight, and Satanists are usually painted as the bad guys. But be aware that the same things that we experienced in the 1980s can and may be happening again today. The stories change, but the narrative never changes. I enjoyed the 80s. I loved the music, the hair bands, but I hated the war that the media and established religions waged on us as those on the left-hand